just so everyone can get in all the questions and absorb all the knowledge that you're excited to receive today. Our speaker is Doug Brown, and he is an executive and career coach with more than 30 years of experience helping people and organizations reach their full potential. He's the head executive coach and chief learning officer of Summit Success International, a global personal and professional development firm. Doug is a lawyer who turned entrepreneur, business builder, and fixer. He's helped create and turn around countless careers and multiple 7 and 8 figure businesses over the years. He is a Book Yourself Solid certified coach, and his business insights have been featured in publications that I'm sure you are very familiar with, like the Chicago Tribune, Inc. Magazine, the New York Post, and Wired.com, which is all very awesome. So we're super stoked to have him here with us today. So please welcome Doug Brown.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Tara. So appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm going to share my screen. I've got a little slide deck for you. I would encourage you. I want to thank, and also Kristen for helping to organize this. I'd met Antoine at a chamber event. We got to chatting, and he told me about this event, and so he connected, and we had a great conversation about how to unlock your career potential. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But I'd love being interactive in these small groups. So if you have things that you would like to ask, you can put them in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand feature. I'm going to do my best in the next 50 minutes to get to all of your questions. So I'm going to click share screen and do that. So now you should be able to see that. Yep, now we can see my slide deck. So I want to take you back and demonstrate how old I am, I guess. I want to take you back to 2002. There's an ambitious young professional who is really good at his job. He has an excellent boss who is invested in him, and he's developed quite a ways, and it's gotten to the point after 5 or 6 years of really just wanting to do something else. So when he has his one-on-one with the boss, he says, I want to do more. I want to take on more responsibility and do more things and make more of a contribution. And this goes on for a while. And his boss, who's normally very patient, gets more and more frustrated and finally says, I can't decide for you. You need to decide what you want and where you want to go. And then maybe I can help you. Whoops. So that was me. And that one conversation literally changed my whole approach to my career and to getting ahead, and made me realize that really I needed to be in control and not allowing someone else to just drop things in my lap and it might be okay. So that led me to really think about what I wanted. I read an article, which is still very relevant to today, by Tom Peters in Fast Company magazine, called The Brand Called You. And it really opened up the opportunity for me to move from, at that time I was lawyering, into business roles for the global company as we went from 30 to $300 million. I left there and got into teaching. I taught for 6 years in an MBA program, teaching innovation and entrepreneurship and leadership. And then I got recruited to go in and become the executive director of the Connecticut State Bar Association to rescue them. Bar Rescue, if you've seen that show, but this was a bar association for lawyers. I went from there into a family jewelry business where I helped a good friend transition from generation 4 to generation 5 so his daughters could take it over. And along the way, I became a Book Yourself Solid certified coach, a professionally trained speaker. And along the way, did a fair amount of career coaching too, because I had encountered a lot of people who were dissatisfied and are wondering, how did you make all those changes? I'm like, I don't know, I just did. So that's kind of my story a little bit. And the challenge I found, and maybe you would find the same thing, is I felt like I was living on a hamster wheel, that I was going, and I felt like I was going somewhere, and I was wearing myself out. But I figured, hey, I'm young and I'm tough, and I should just tough it out. It's part of the ride. It's part of paying my dues. I don't want to show any weakness. And so that was, I guess, okay when I was in my 20s. But then when I got to my 30s, I'm like, there's a problem. It's exhausting and it's not sustainable. So at Summit Success, we're a global personal professional development firm. We like to talk about opportunity. And boy, what a great time we're in 2022 for opportunity. And the opportunity I want to talk to you about today is to take control of your career and live a profitable and satisfying life. That sounds pretty cool, right? And the benefits. Imagine you can pop out of bed in the morning. There's no alarm clock. You're excited about your day ahead, as opposed to dragging yourself out of bed and wondering, oh, what's today going to bring? What about if your day flowed smoothly, you were unhurried, you're in control, you have the time to be creative and curious about things, maybe even outside of work. You can think and reflect about what you're doing instead of just being a doing machine. We're human beings, we're not human doings. And you could even have time for that F word, that fun. How cool would that be? You can watch your favorite show, watch billions on Showtime, go to bed early and sleep well, ready to get up and do it again. And you can advance 10, 20, 30 years in your career and look back on a life that is rich, full, and deeply satisfying. And those are all the things you get when you can take control of your career. So in the journey that I've described to you, I discovered some keys that I want to use to kind of talk about the skills that I think would be helpful. But first, I do want to see if anyone has any questions or things that they would like to make sure I get to today. So if you have something, go ahead and raise your hand, or go ahead and put something in the chat. And even when it occurs to you, just go ahead and put something in. Okay, so what's the secret formula? And I didn't know this secret formula when I was going through this. It was only in recent years that I look back and said, well, what was the thing that allowed me to recover from burnout, to take good care of my mental health, to take good care of other people, and also really be in control of my career? And if I were talking to the younger version of myself, what would I say? What principles would I share? And I would share the PACER principles. And I like PACER because it's like a pace car, or if you're running, you have to learn to pace yourself. And they stand for something. And I'm going to talk about each one. P is for purpose, power, and priorities. A is what you're pay attention to, what you're aware of, and how you stay in action. C is communication, courage, and community. E is energy, emotional intelligence, and the experiences you provide and create. And then resilience, resourcefulness, rest, and recovery. Now, the thing that I have found is at the time in my life when I have felt lost or not at my best, it's because one of these things has been out of whack. I would have lost touch with my purpose. I wasn't being in productive action. I didn't have a community to really support me. My energy, I was managing my energy poorly. So this is like a little bit of a multiplication equation. So if any one of these factors is 0 or negative, what happens? You can't move forward. So these are things that as we go through, I think, and I've found that they really help you take control of yourself and chart your career. The first one, I just realized that picture is kind of fuzzy, is P, is for purpose. And one of the great videos I have my private coaching clients watch is Simon Sinek's TED Talk, How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And it's a fantastic talk. It's 18 minutes well spent. And I'm not going to try to redo Simon's talk, but I will tell you that the principle he talks about, that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Whether you're selling yourself to your boss or to your customer or for your career, your why is incredibly important. People try to connect with your purpose. And when I have seen people be out of alignment, and what my boss had asked me those years ago was, what is it that lights you up? What is it that when you're doing that, you're at your best. And you feel like it's not work at all. You've got this energy. And because your purpose is really your sense of power. So when your purpose is clear, and it's not, when I've worked with career people, yes, start with why, right, Craig? Great, fantastic book, definitely worth reading. My bookshelf, if you could see it, is packed with this stuff. When I have seen people come to me, they're unhappy in their career, and I will say, well, what do you want to do? I just want to make more money. That's not going to work. I just want to be happy. Okay, the more you pursue happiness, the less you get it. What is it that is really, why do you do this in the first place? Well, I'm doing it to support my family and to feel like I'm making a difference in the world. Okay, to whom? And the clearer you get on that purpose, the more powerful it becomes. And then that can drive your decision and all of your priorities. So you all chose the career that you're in, either on purpose or by accident. When I spoke in a room full of 100 lawyers and I said, how many of you became lawyers by accident? A bunch of hands went up. They just wandered into their career. Or maybe you chose your career knowing exactly what you wanted to do. What you knew and the life experience you had then is different than you have now. And it's okay to explore that. So to think about, why do I continue to do what I do? How does it match with my values, with what's important in the world, the difference I want to make in the world? And how is the place I'm doing it in alignment with that is a really important place to explore. I do the work I do now because, and do talks like this, because I was a lawyer. And when you go into lawyering, it was a great experience, but I knew there was something more. I didn't want to have to wonder what if. I didn't want to do what people around me were doing it for 20, 30, 40 years and then wondering, well, what I really wanted to do was this other thing, if I'd only done that. And so the reason I do these and I work with private and group coaching clients is because I don't want anybody to wonder what if. So P is about your purpose and your priorities being in alignment with your power. So if you're not clear on your purpose, if you can't describe it to yourself, then I'd invite you to consider spending some time on that. Why is it you really do what you do? And think about the tasks and the experiences you have and which ones light you up where you feel most alive. And how does that relate to your values? And that way, because your purpose is the key to unlocking your career potential. The second piece, and you'll see that all these are related, right? I had to come up with something, is awareness. Boy, I wish I had learned this early on. It wasn't until I needed to recover from burnout in my 40s that I became aware of the power of mindful awareness, of really paying attention to what's going on with myself, in the world around me, and with other people. And so many people go through their daily life so focused, so head down, that they're not aware of what's going on or even how their job's affecting them. So awareness is a good thing. And then you have to decide what you're going to pay attention to, because there's so many distractions and things to pay attention to now. It's easy. And I used to believe that I could pay attention to everything. And I'm pretty good at paying attention to a lot of things. But what I realize is when you split your attention, you're not really paying attention to anything. And that's true whether you're in a meeting with someone and your mind is on something else, it's on your phone, or whether you're talking with a loved one. But how intensely you pay attention and really allow yourself to be in the moment is an important part of just staying focused and being able to build your career. So what are you aware of and what are you paying attention to? That's how I made many moves in my career. I was always alert for the things that were happening around me. I was always alert about creating relationships with people, and then aware and paid attention when I was no longer satisfied or when I thought I needed to make a preemptive move. And so when you're always aware of what's going on and making an intentional decision on what to pay attention to, you can separate the noise from the things that really matter, because there's so much going on that it's hard to pay attention. Then, okay, so now what do you do? When I was teaching in the MBA program at the Baldrige School of Business, I learned about the action learning cycle. And this really makes sense. You plan what you want to do and what are the steps that you need to take. And then you get an action and you carry out your plan. Makes sense. Now, a lot of people follow the fire, ready, aim approach, but I'd like to believe that you come up with a plan and you act. And then this is the part, the reflection part is the part that's difficult for a lot of people when you're thinking about action. What actually happened? Why did it happen? How did you feel about it? What went well? What didn't go well? And I'll tell you, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. More mistakes than you ever want to think about or count. It's not whether you make mistakes. It's about how you recover from those mistakes. Excuse me 1 second. And that's part of the learning process, where without judgment of yourself for whatever failure you may have had, what can I learn from it, and how do I recycle that back into the plan? One of the things that where are my notes here? There they are. They were behind the screen. One of the most powerful things you can use right now when you're dealing with being in action and dealing with other people, especially supervisors and bosses and colleagues, when you feel like you might need to react to something, give yourself a moment and say, what is the outcome that I want out of this interaction? And more importantly, what experience do I want to provide? How do I want the other person to feel? What's in service to that person and the relationship? And when you stop and think about what you actually would move things forward and act on that, about what's the outcome you want, you develop huge amount of credibility, and you're able to move a relationship forward where it needs to go. So start with the outcome. What's the outcome you have in mind? So one of my private coaching clients, we use this. He would come home from the office and he'd be all fired up, and his kids would be going crazy. They're high school age kids, and his wife would be just waiting for him to come home, and his brain would still be at the office. So he'd come home and it wasn't pleasant. So I was working with him on time management, a bunch of things, but this came up. And I said, okay, so what would happen before you got out of your truck and walked into your house if you thought, what outcome do I want to have when I roll into the house? What's going on with them? What do I want my kids and my wife to experience? And so he answered the question. He said, I'd like to be relaxed, and I'd like not to have people fight. And so what would you have to do? So that was, he was being intentional about that. So we did that. And then 3 or 4 sessions later, because we met every other week, I said, how's it going? He said, my wife has noticed that she said, I'm a better person to be around since we started working together. Wow. And it was all because he was being intentional in his actions and what he wanted to create. So you can do the same thing today, right now. And when you, and it could be in your cocktail party later on today. What do I want this person to experience with me? I want to be a good listener. I want to take interest in them. That's all being aware and paying attention and what you're in, and to be in action. So the next part of it is the C for communication, courage, and community. So the thing when I teach communication and leadership is that communication is not just about what you say. Does anybody know the formula of how much of communication comes in the words that you use? What percent? Well, it turns out, you can put it in the chat if you know, but we'll keep going, that only 7% of what you say is in the words that you use. 38% is in the tone of voice, vocal variety, pitch, cadence of what you say. And 55% is visual. It's the cues that you don't get on a Zoom call when you're just looking at a head. So when you communicate and you believe you're communicating something, you're going through, as in my little picture shows, everybody's filters and biases. So you think you're communicating one thing and they're getting something else. You've probably had this experience with your parents where you're trying to talk about X and they're reacting to something else because they put all these filters in the way. So as you're thinking, and I learned this in speaker school, one of the things you can do is when you're interacting with people, like maybe your boss or a colleague, thinking about them as your audience and not to get hung up on your stories about what they might think, but what do I know and how can I communicate effectively with this person in a way that will move the cause forward? Because communication is a two-way street. One of the conversations that is so critical that I've talked to other professionals about, both bosses and employees, is the corrective conversation when the boss or the employee is not happy about something that is going on in their world. And so many people are reluctant to have these conversations. And so they just let things go. And then they wonder, why is the relationship deteriorating? But if you think about what is it, like if I'll take from the perspective of something we taught when I was at the jewelry company out of the 1 minute manager, is confirming if somebody has not done something, if somebody's reporting to you and has not done something correctly, start by confirming that they understood what the requirement was. Not, you made a mistake. Did you understand, Kristen, what was, tell me what you think was expected in this situation. And then Kristen would either explain it correctly and like, okay, great. So what happened? So it's staying curious and focusing on how can you learn, remember action learning from that situation. And by the way, if Kristen isn't able to explain what it was that was expected, then I would know that maybe I wasn't clear. So maybe that's not Kristen's problem. Maybe that's my problem. And you've got to have that kind of, you're right, Kristen, curiosity. I deal with so many of my clients who are having employee issues, and they have concocted amazing stories about what's going on in the employee's head about why something did or didn't happen. And then I stop and say, well, have you had a conversation? Oh, no. What if you just went in without judgment and were curious about what was going on to find some more facts? Is it possible that your story you've told yourself isn't true? Well, no, it's probably true. Is it possible that it's not true? And almost every single time they come back and say, I'm really glad I went into that conversation that way. The same thing can happen if you have people at part of your career who are dumping lots of work on you. And you've got a problem establishing boundaries and the work that has to happen. When I was younger as a lawyer, it was, I just have to take all the work and somehow figure it out till I realized that wasn't sustainable. So the communication piece here is to have the courage to have a conversation and say, I understand you've got all these things for me to do and 14 people want 15 other things. There's only so many hours in the day. Can you help me prioritize? And if an employee came to me with that, I'd be thrilled that they had the initiative to have that conversation with me, rather than an excuse later that something didn't happen because something got in the way. So the fear that you're going to be somehow vulnerable by asking that question, the truth is exactly the opposite. You build your credibility and your career credibility by having that conversation. Which leads me to the next part of this, which is talking about courage. Courage, contrary to popular opinion, is not about being fearless. It's having strategies and experiences so that you can take that anxiety and work through it. My son was, while he was in college, he was a firefighter. And I guarantee you, firefighters are not fearless, but they have trained and they have been through enough experiences and they have community that when they're presented with something that would cause us to freeze up, they know how to deal with it. So they have strategies. They recognize the signs when they might be freezing up. And they're not afraid to make mistakes. So, and I love this, I put this graphic up because, excuse me. I had this conversation with a friend last night. We were out to dinner in Savannah, and I said, you know, they call firefighters first responders, not first reactors, because his son's a firefighter. Because when they show up on scene, then they muster the courage to do the work that they need to do. They are not reacting to whatever's in front of them. They are calling on their training. They're calling on their equipment, on their experience, and they are making an intentional decision to respond in a certain way. So, and we wouldn't want first reactors. If we had first reactors, we'd run out of firefighters and police officers and ambulance people. So when you are in that moment and you need to have your courage and communicate, and you're tempted to react in a way that is maybe not productive, first, recognize that that reaction is a fear response that you don't control. So don't get down on yourself because you had some reaction. But before you get into action, you can use your thinking ability to say, all right, what's my outcome here? What do I want to accomplish? And how do I respond? And how can I have the courage to have a difficult conversation from a place of curiosity? Does that all make sense? One of the next thing is about community. I'm probably dating myself with the reference to Friends, although you probably have all seen it on reruns. But one of the times I have found when I've been in some of the darkest places in my career, it's because of community. And it's true that you rise or fall to the level of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And you need to have the courage to say no to those that don't serve you, not try to be the smartest one in the room, and be open to that community. When I was lawyering, I was the director of the Bar Association. I had 10,000 lawyers as bosses. You know the difference between God and a lawyer? I can say this because I am one. God doesn't think he's a lawyer. The community wasn't supportive at all. And then I went into this public speaking program and I found my people that were energetic and supportive and genuine. And I really saw the power of the community. And what you all can have here through this organization is the power of community, of people who want to lift each other up, who will help and do things for other people, who are not there with hidden agendas and trying to maneuver, but just genuineness. And a part of that was at each of my pivotal moments, I had access to a coach, a career coach, a business coach, a good friend who was coaching me. And at that time, coaching wasn't really a thing. I was kind of a first adopter, I guess. But having someone who will tell you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it, who has the experience, who's been there and done that, is a huge accelerator. Not only accelerator, but keep you from stepping on your own air hose in your career. It's just enormously valuable. And the research from the International Coaching Federation shows that investments on coaching are better than 5 times the investment in coaching. So a lot of executives have it. And I'd encourage you as as young professionals or younger professionals, not only to have informal mentors, but to be asking about how do you get the right coach to help you to develop to your full potential, because your companies want you at your full potential. They don't want you burning out, and they want you to be there. So the community, and you see, I hope, how these things are all related. So now we're on, that's on the community. And I'm glad I have water. The next part, so we've talked about power of purpose, being aware, and paying attention, and being in action, communication, courage in your community. The next three are energy, emotional intelligence, and experiences. And these are all kind of related. And when I say energy, I teach time, we do time management, time mastery courses. And they're enormously powerful and make a big difference. And one of the things we teach is to manage your energy. It's as important to manage your energy as it is to manage your time. And your energy is, remember that communication, the 7:30, 8:55? Your energy is how you show up in the world. And we are really good at detecting other people's energy without even really realizing it. So it's all part of that nonverbal communication. So managing your energy is essential. And we could probably do a whole program on that, the time mastery program about that. But being mindfully aware of how am I showing up in the world? How am I showing up in this room? Like my client who showed up for his family. How do I want to be in the world? And what things can I do to give myself more energy? Whether it's doing work that you love or exercising, but being intentional about managing that. And sometimes, like I remember there was one time that, more than one time, I got home and I knew I was in a really negative place. And so before I walked in the door, I'm like, okay, I'm aware that I'm in a really negative place. That's not who I want to be. So what could I decide to do differently? And that was managing my energy. I don't know that I was a perfect person showing up, but I certainly showed up better than I would have if I just mindlessly walked in the door. All part of mastering your career. The number one skill with the highest correlation to professional success is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, unlike IQ, can be learned. And there are 4 elements of emotional intelligence. I've talked about some of them already: self-awareness and self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And there are whole courses on emotional intelligence. And you may be sitting here thinking that the other people in your company probably need that because maybe they're not as emotionally intelligent as you'd like them to be. And you'd probably be right. It's not something that has been taught for many, many years. It's only recently something that leadership gurus are talking about, because leaders now need to use better skills to retain employees, because it's no longer, the suffering, the beatings will continue till morale improves, that you need better leadership. So emotional intelligence is an essential skill. The other part of E is experiences. Chip and Dan Heath wrote a book, The Power of Moments. And in that book, they make a case for, it's really about the power of the experience that you have and the experience you provide to other people. And you see that when you have in your control of your energy and you use your emotional intelligence, you will provide better experiences, because that's what people remember. If you're trying to get ahead in your career, you want to be consistently good at what you're doing. Of course, you want to look for opportunities to create experiences for customers, for colleagues, for vendors like that, and your bosses, like that one my boss had with me that I talked about a little while back. Because that was, I may not remember a lot of stuff, but I remember that moment. I remember, and you remember, think of moments in your career, conversations that made a difference. So if you're trying to get ahead and build your stock price and think about what it is that you want to do managing brand you, What kind of experiences do you want to provide with the people around you who can advance you in your career? If you're intentional about that, you can even take a bad situation, a situation where you're really fouled up royally, and create a positive experience out of that. So that's energy, emotional intelligence, and experiences. And the last three part is resilience, resourcefulness, and rest and recovery. Resilience is basically how you recover from difficulty. You don't want to, the boomers of the world are always looking out for people that they jokingly refer to, maybe not so jokingly, as the special snowflakes who are going to melt. You want to be tough. You want to be resilient. You want to learn to adapt and not allow yourself to get stuck in ruminating about what's not working. Be solution oriented. And that's the next one. Now I'm dating myself again with MacGyver, although that show has come back again. When I was working, the people who I would advance in their careers and who would advance themselves are solutions-based people. If they didn't know how to do something, they would do some work and try to come with a solution. I don't know what the solution is, but here are some options. What do you think? The worst scenario is to come back and say, and none of you would probably do this, but I don't know, what should I do? That means the other person has to think. And yeah, they should, but they shouldn't have to think for you. So what is it that you can do? And even if you don't know, you could say, I'm not sure, but here are some ideas. So, and that's completing the work and finding a way to get that happen. And so what would MacGyver do? You guys probably may know MacGyver was a guy who could take a toilet paper roll and make a weapon out of it or something. The last one, and this is probably the most important one, this is the last most important one, rest and recovery. Those of you who are athletes know that your rest and recovery time is just as important as your training time. So this can show up in a bunch of ways. One, during the day, giving yourself some space using the Pomodoro technique and some space between tasks to rest and recover, as opposed to going back to back to back to back to back. It can also be during the week, be intentionally scheduling some time and making sure that when you're doing rest and recovery, you're doing things that are actually recharging you. It might be sitting on the sofa and watching Billions. It might be going for a run and getting outside. The risk of not doing this is that burnout is real. It's a medical condition, and it comes when you don't have strategies, the strategies that you need to address the situation. I've been there. I also know that chronic long-term stress can trigger mental health issues that may not have been there before. So taking care of yourself you are your most important asset to your career. And it affects how you show up in the world. And if you take care of yourself, you will show up better. You will be more resourceful. You'll have better energy, and you can accomplish your purpose. And I do want to say that I don't like the concept of work-life balance, because balance is a static concept. You may go through weeks where you don't have much in the way of work-life balance. And that happens. But doing little things for yourself, even paying attention to your nutrition and exercise, is incredibly important. Because when you're looking to get ahead and make your next career move, people are going to think about the experiences that you provided for them and how you show up and the purpose you have in the world. And they're going to be looking for people who are resourceful, who can communicate well. And all of that depends on you taking good care of yourself. So when you think you might see the signs that you're not taking care of yourself, enlist a buddy. Talk to your physician, seek help. Going it alone, I can tell you from personal experience, doesn't work. It makes it, whether it's, and sometimes it's not family. and it might not even be friends because it might not be things you want to talk about, which is where having a mentor, a guide, or a coach to be there with you is essential. Because all of the moves that I made were not one was made in a vacuum. I had a team around me that allowed me to make really good decisions, or at least not terrible decisions. So we've come to the part of the program where we can do some live Q&A, Kristen, I think, or Tara, we can do that. Somebody have any questions or comments they'd like to share?
I'll share that I really struggle, and I'm practicing it, working on the rest and recovery and managing my energy. So I just want to do everything.
So what kind of so the rest of so what's keeping you from giving yourself that time?
I would like more hours in the day, and I want to do so much. So but I'm practicing. Yesterday, I could have taken a nap during a break. Instead, I went and worked out, and I felt more energized than I would have if I would have sat around and watched TV. So
yes, and don't underestimate the power of a nap. That got me through law school. There are so many things that you can choose, that sometimes your stop doing list is as important as your to-do list. And putting and it's okay to stop doing things that don't serve you. And then of all the things that you might want to do, thinking about your plan and your priorities and which one would give me the most leverage in this moment to move myself forward. Because there's only so many things that you can do and do well. And one of the challenges is knowing how to say no. I actually have something I can share with each of you on how to say no without being negative. But oftentimes it's saying no to yourself, because I want to do these things. I can do these things. And that seems interesting. And that seems interesting. And squirrel. Not that I have any experience with that. So giving yourself that moment. One of the things I do is when I have a nifty idea, I write it in my little notebook, and it's like a parking lot. And if I come back to it the next day or a couple times, I'm like, okay, that should make it on the list. And then I also reserve time during the week just to kind of work on fun stuff. I see it in the chat. Chelsea put a question. You just recently found a mentor. Have any recommendations for successful mentor-mentee relationship? That's a fantastic question. The thing I wish I had done when I got into had a mentor for the first time is to really sit down and have an initial conversation about what you're each looking for out of the relationship and how to support each other. And it's good to have that conversation. And how do we communicate together? How do we communicate effectively? It's like setting up the ground rules. And sometimes, when I was younger, if they were the president of the company or the VP of the division, I would put them on some pedestal and be very reserved and very conscious of their time. And it turns out later on that they're people. They just want a connection with you too. And if somebody is being a mentor, unless they're being voluntold to be a mentor, they're doing it because they want to share experience. So creating some space and having the conversation, having a regular routine for checking in. And as the mentee, it's a shared responsibility to stay in contact and connect and respect the boundaries of that. Which your question reminded me of another book that every one of you should have. I wish I had written it, but it's called The First 90 Days. And there's a newer version, revised and expanded. And the idea of the first 90 days, what I've used it for, is a roadmap to starting a new job. and even a new position inside a new company. And one of the things in the first 90 days is something called the 5 conversations that you would have with a new boss. And Chelsea, that would be a good model to have with a new mentor. It's a situation conversation, it's the communication and expectations, and really savor that relationship. And recognize the boundaries of a mentor relationship, that if you've got a mentor through work and you think that you might want to change jobs, that's probably not part of that mentor's role. That would put them in an awkward space. But having your own kind of advisory board or having a number of mentors is really, really helpful. And I see another comment there with conversation guides. Yeah, that's a great point. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce Nipuna, I think. I'm sorry if I got
It's Nipuna, you pronounced it right. Thank you.
Oh, good, good. Oftentimes just go and you can do some research on how to start a mentor-mentee relationship. And I love the link that you shared because it's a good authoritative source. It's from a university. It's not somebody trying to sell you a program on, let me teach you how to be a better mentor. And that's good things to share in the group. You could talk to people in this group about what have you done to use a mentor effectively? Are there other questions? I've got a couple more ideas to share, but I want to make sure I can get to your questions.
I would, if you don't mind, like to hear a little bit more about your about saying no. I think that's a comment or a conversation that I felt has come up a lot more with some of my colleagues or peers about no in a variety of ways, but just setting boundaries about expectations outside of work hours. I think for the longest time, especially if you were really hungry, younger in your career, you want to say yes all the time, even if it's 7 o'clock at night when you're with your family. So, and I think that's something that, again, if you're really eager, you have a tendency to want to do. And then as you get older, you realize like that time is even more valuable. But if you have a habit of handling it the way that you have in the past, how do you break that habit, suppose, or and not feel guilty about it, really? Wow,
That's a great question. Thank you. And we could probably spend a whole hour on that we don't have, but I'll give you a couple of pointers on it. When you're young, your default answer is yes. They don't even have to finish asking the question before you've already decided to say yes. Change your default answer to no. Now, I'm not suggesting you put your hand up and say, talk to the hand, the answer is no. But in your mind, have the default answer be no. And then how do we communicate that? So let's see. Yeah, saying no to family and friends, time to, yeah. So the key is to do it in a way that's not being negative. So if you are, let's see. Yes, no is a complete sentence. I want to talk about that and then I'm going to come back and I will share this. I had one of my clients is a 50-plus-year-old woman lawyer, and she was regaling me with basically men behaving badly stories. And part of our conversation was boundaries and saying no. And she would say no and then continue to explain the rationale. And I said, no is a complete sentence. You don't owe them a rationale on why their behavior is not appropriate. And it means it's trite to just say no. So that's an extreme case. If you're being asked to take on a new responsibility or a new task, an assignment, one, you need the context of having regular one-on-one conversations with, if it's coming from your boss. So they're aware of what your workload is, because I guarantee you they don't remember. They give you things and they forget about it. They keep piling things on and they have no idea you're overloaded. So if they're going to give you a new thing, you can say, I want I understand this is important. I have these other things that are important too. How can I arrange these things to get them done in the time allotted? That's just saying no, but you didn't use the word no. If you have been voluntold or volunteered for a thank you for your comments. We're going to wrap up in just a couple minutes real quick. It's okay to state your intention saying, I've valued my time here and I need to be doing other things, and then to work on a transition, to step away. I do have something, Tara, I can share with you. If you guys send me the people's emails, I will send them my how to say no without being negative. And if it's in service to you, we could even come back and do another talk on that and talk about some specific situations and words to use. I have a great time doing that, and it's really helpful to have specific scenarios. So in the interest of time, and I'll continue to take questions, but I wish I knew how important it was to have a career strategy when I was in my 20s and 30s. And so what I want to offer to you is an opportunity for us to have a one-on-one conversation about where you are in your career and what your career strategy is. And so you can feel like you're more in control. And along the way, you'll learn, you're going to walk away with something you can absolutely use. And you'll get to see what it's like to work with a coach and see whether our individual or group coaching programs might be something that's in service to you and your colleagues. So if that's something you would like to do, you can go to our website, summit-success.com/call Doug. I'll put that in the chat. You can send me an email, and you can also connect on LinkedIn. Let me write that down. I didn't have it prepared in advance. And there's no charge, expectation, or obligation. It's just something in service to this, my new local community, because I just moved down from Connecticut about a year ago. And I think the last point here, because I want to honor your time. Remember, I talked at the beginning about the transformation, that what you can have, a career, being wealthy in time and being satisfied, and looking back on your career and saying, that was a life well lived. I made a difference in my career. I had the kind of life that I wanted. I feel like I made a difference. And that's what you get when you take control and apply and live at a decent pace and apply the strategies that I talked about today. And that's what I wish for you. I wish and hope that you discover what you really want, and that you go get it, and that you pay these lessons forward to those around you. You spend the vast majority of your life in your career. You deserve to be satisfied, to be respected, to have some fun, and have a life that you really want. And that's why I do the work that I do. So I would love to have an opportunity to talk to you all one-on-one. Invite you to do that. And I think we're just about the top of the hour. So if there's no other questions, I am just thrilled to have a chance to spend some time with you. And maybe we can do, when we get more live and in person, we can meet in person sometime. So Tara, I'll hand it back to you. Thanks so much for the chance to be a part of your little group today.
We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for that really valuable insight and information. I'm sure some people will take advantage of that, and I'll definitely find you on LinkedIn. I know personally those connections are just so key. And so we really appreciate that. And I really hope we can bring you back, because I think I think that's such a strong and I don't want to say like a sexy topic, but I think it's like something that everybody is interested in learning how to do better. And so
Yeah.
I know we have a captive audience that would love to learn more. And so we'll definitely talk about that in the near future. Thank you again so much for your time. I know everyone is clapping with their mute on, but
yeah, become used to just talking to a camera, but it's nice to thank you very much for your feedback.
Thank you so much. And
have some fun tonight.
Yes,
Thank
I think
you so much,
everyone will
Doug.
get a chance to join us this evening if you're available again.